Uh, when I joined Hotstar, I was like a kid in a candy shop. There's going to be so much data. It's just this fantastic company with so many millions and millions of users. I should be able to figure out how to optimize with tiny things, everything. I just spent, I think, a couple of weeks just going through the data and creating dashboards, etc., etc. And then I went to the CEOs and CPTOs and then presented all of these things. Hey, look, this tiny retention thing, this particular entertainment cohort, we should be trying to do this, etc. They looked at everything, uh, and they effectively came back to me and told me, look, we're going to give you one single metric, and this single metric is across the floor, and that single metric was watch time. If you do anything, I don't care if you're increasing retention by X bits. I don't care if you improve onboard percentage by X bits. You have to increase watch time. That's what you're going to be measured against. That's what the entire company is going to be measured against. And these are sort of fantastic people who are setting these constraints. Ajit Mohan, who was the CEO of Hotstar then, is now the CEO of Facebook. Varun Narang, who's still the CPO of Facebook, was an early employee at Hotstar. So for a company that was so knees deep in data, it was refreshing to see how uh, almost cavalier they were with in terms of not obsessing about the minor details of data. And this does wonders in terms of giving the organization clarity and giving you as a PM a lot of clarity. And we were also operating, even though Hotstar was a big company, it's a very small team that was working at that time, which meant we were forcibly forced to always pick features that would move the needle for the biggest thing, which was watch time at that point of time. And and that's how sort of the company grew from obsessive. I mean, you can see all the other OTT platforms that have come up or have tried to work, but this obsession with watch time for a long time ensured that Hotstar's tech product platform and in general sort of the growth stayed way above anybody else. When the right time came, you will always be able to switch this single metric. So Hotstar has now switched to revenue, but for at any point of time, you always obsess with a single metric. This, if you're an early stage founder or early PM, will deliberately force you to write PRDs or write products which will always focus on one tiny feature or one small feature or one core thesis. So this is the second thing, single metric. Now, third thing is talking to competitor PMs. And I think this isn't talked about enough. It's talked about as a general principle, but isn't enforced as a practice enough. So this was my task when I was at Hotstar. We had sort of fixed a lot of our video streaming problems, and now we're thinking of actually pushing the boundaries of what a live sports product should look like. Live sports obviously evokes tons of emotions within you, right? You're supporting for your team, you're discussing along with your friends, you're playing fantasy games. How do we elevate Hotstar from just this tiny black rectangle, which is just receiving the video and you can play and pause? How can we sort of make it more emotionally closer to what you feel during the match? And we had tons of discussions around this, and we sort of broadly came down to, let's do a mix of a tiny fantasy game within the within the match. So while the live match is playing, let's get people to try and sort of play something for some kinds of rewards so that their time spent increases, so that watch time increases. Again, the overall metric is still watch time. So everything that I do is still for watch time. Now, this was a very tough problem for me. I didn't have any background in fantasy. I didn't have any background in gaming, and I had to launch this in 3 months. And IPL is a tricky beast in the sense that that tournament comes actually in April, and you can't really do a 1% launch or a tiny alpha launch before that, because there is no cricket tournament before that. So you have to launch to 100%, which means your P0 has to be perfect. So you're under immense pressure. I've never done gaming before, and I started reading about gaming. And gaming has these complex paradigms: in-game currency, reward ladders, P2P, gacha boxes. Fantasy in itself is a big complex thing in itself. What are the different fantasy models? Do you do daily? Do you do series-wise? Do you do P2P? Do you do public? Do you do 5Os? Do you do single match? And I was just overwhelmed with everything. How do I sort of distill all of this information into a single sort of game that is launchable in the next 3 months? And I didn't have more than 2 weeks to edit and fix this thing. So instead of spending 4 hours, 5 hours just daily speaking to some experts or speaking to or reading up on what different mechanisms should be, I just tried finding PMs, actual PMs who've shipped to the exact same, who've gone through the same product thesis and shipped it somewhere else. And we eventually managed to find someone who had not only done fantasy and who'd actually built gaming companies. He listened to us for 30 minutes and he distilled all of this into a very simple paradigm. He told us, look, you are clearly going after scale. You're not looking after at revenue at this point of time. You want watch time to increase, which means your game should be simple, which means your game should be as simple as possible. How simple? Single tap, you win something. That's it. This automatically throws out 90% of game design principles that I need, which is great. Then he told me, okay, fantasy, similar principles. There can be complex fantasies. Pick your team, 11 people, 3 people, but everything is complex. Your fantasy needs to be uh, as simple as possible. Can we do, let's say, then we start brainstorming 5 over fantasies. What will happen? How many runs will be scored in the next 5 overs? No, that's too complex. 1 over fantasies. Who's going to get out in the next 1 hour? Too complex. What's going to happen in this ball? And this then what became sort of this genesis of an idea. Oh, this is now not even fantasy. This is something that you're constantly thinking of in your natural flow of the game. You're thinking of, hey, what's going to happen in the next ball? This doubles up. This is sort of a minor reduced version of fantasy. Tap on it and you win. That's it. So I could have got the plethora of decisions that were facing me when I was on this cliff of jumping down and saying, okay, we want to build a game. I could have gone down several routes. I could have built a Dream Alliance clone. I could have built a, let's say, Zomato style, hey, who's going to win in this match? I could have built tons of things, but what for us would have worked best within I didn't have the time to figure that out. I didn't have the time to test it out. This sort of one person and a couple of other people who are experts, speaking with them just gave me clarity of how to ignore everything else, build this tiny game. This game ended up being played by 20 million odd people. We're the most played game by default in that month. It increased watch time significantly for every single person who played, ended up doing a decent chunk for the bottom line, ended up decently increasing our watch party. And this wouldn't, watch time. And this wouldn't have happened had I not sort of actually gone out and sought that person who would have given me that clarity. Had I sort of continued to write everything that I could have thought of and try and sort of pick something off of that after testing, I didn't just have the time to do it. So this is very, I think, underappreciated. Speak to someone who's just done it. They will always be able to tell you, hey, people don't care about this, people don't care about this, just build this.